My mom told me, "You won't be at Thanksgiving this year. Your sister's new husband thinks you'd ruin the vibe." I didn't argue. The next morning, when he walked into my office and saw me, he started yelling because the phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing quarterly reports when Mom's name flashed across my screen. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving," she said, her voice carrying that particular tremor that meant bad news was coming. I set down my pen. "What's wrong?" "Well, Charlotte and Nathan have been discussing the holiday plans, and they think it might be better if you sat this one out." The words tumbled out quickly, like she'd been rehearsing them. "Nathan feels that your presence might create some tension, given everything with your career and, well, he thinks it would be more comfortable for everyone if it was just immediate family this year." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I just heard. My sister's husband of 6 months had decided I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving. In my own family home. "I see," I managed to say. "I'm so sorry, honey. I tried to talk to Charlotte, but she's really trying to make Nathan happy, and he's been so adamant about this. He thinks you're too focused on work, too intense, and it might make everyone uncomfortable." Too intense. That was rich coming from a man I'd met exactly 4 times, each encounter more awkward than the last. Nathan worked in sales for a pharmaceutical company and had very strong opinions about women who prioritized their careers over family. He'd made several comments at the wedding about how I should be thinking about settling down instead of climbing the corporate ladder. "It's fine, Mom. I understand." I didn't, but arguing would only make her feel worse. "Maybe we can do something, just the 2 of us, the week after?" she offered weakly. "Sure. That sounds nice." After we hung up, I stared at my computer screen without really seeing it. 29 years of family Thanksgivings, and I was being excluded because my sister's new husband found me threatening. Charlotte hadn't even called me herself. She'd let Mom deliver the news like some kind of emotional courier service. My office door opened and Jennifer poked her head in. "Hey, the Westbridge presentation is ready for your review. Want to go over it now or after lunch?" "Now is good," I said, pushing thoughts of my family aside. Jennifer had been my assistant for 3 years and had an uncanny ability to read my moods. She stepped in, closing the door behind her. "Everything okay? You look like someone just told you your vacation got canceled." "Family stuff. Nothing I can't handle." I pulled up the presentation on my screen. "Let's focus on this." We spent the next hour refining the pitch that would determine whether Westbridge Technologies became our newest client. As the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Meridian Solutions, I'd built my reputation on landing accounts that other firms couldn't touch. Westbridge was my white whale, a tech company on the verge of explosive growth, and whoever secured their business would essentially write their own ticket in the industry. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 7, as usual. The Westbridge presentation was scheduled for 9, and I wanted to run through it one more time. Their CEO, Thomas Bradley, was notoriously difficult to impress, but I'd done my homework. I knew his company inside and out, understood their pain points, and had crafted solutions that would address their specific needs while positioning them for long-term success. At 8:45, Jennifer buzzed my intercom. "The Westbridge team is here early. They're setting up in conference room A." "Perfect. I'll head over in 5 minutes." I gathered my materials, checked my appearance in the small mirror behind my door, and headed down the hall. I pushed open the conference room door and stepped inside. 3 men in business suits stood around the table, reviewing documents. The one closest to me turned around, and his face went completely white. Nathan. My sister's husband. Staring at me like I'd just risen from the grave. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice rising with each word. I blinked, my mind racing to connect the dots. Nathan worked in pharmaceutical sales. Thomas Bradley was the CEO of Westbridge Technologies. Nathan wasn't Thomas Bradley. "I work here," I said calmly. "I'm leading this presentation. The question is, what are you doing here?" "I'm the new VP of Operations at Westbridge," he sputtered. "I just started 2 weeks ago." Of course he did. Charlotte had mentioned he'd gotten a new job but never specified where. I'd been so busy preparing for this pitch that I hadn't thought to ask for details. The man I assumed was Thomas Bradley stepped forward, his expression curious. You two know each other? She's my wife's sister, Nathan said, practically spitting the words. This is completely inappropriate. There's a conflict of interest here. I maintained my professional composure, though internally I was screaming. Mr. Bradley, I assure you there's no conflict. I wasn't aware that Nathan had joined Westbridge, and my presentation today is based solely on your company's needs and our ability to meet them. My personal relationship with your VP of Operations has no bearing on the business proposal I'm about to present. Nathan's face had progressed from white to an alarming shade of red. This is exactly what I was talking about, Tom. She's manipulative. She probably knew I'd be here and set this whole thing up to embarrass me. That's absurd, I said, my voice level but firm. I've been preparing this presentation for 6 weeks, long before you apparently joined this company. If anyone should be concerned about conflicts of interest, it's me. You're the one who just banned me from Thanksgiving dinner because you find my career success threatening. The third man in the room, who hadn't yet spoken, let out a low whistle. Thomas Bradley held up a hand. Everyone, let's take a breath here. Nathan, why don't you and Greg step outside for a moment? I'd like to speak with Ms. Monroe privately. Nathan looked like he wanted to argue, but Bradley's expression left no room for debate. He and Greg filed out, Nathan shooting me a venomous look as he passed. Once the door closed, Bradley gestured to a chair. Please, sit. I sat, my heart pounding but my exterior calm. That was quite an accusation Nathan made, Bradley said, settling into the chair across from me. Tell me your side. There's not much to tell. My sister married Nathan 6 months ago. We've never been particularly close, but I've always been civil and supportive. Apparently, he finds my career focus unsettling. Yesterday, my mother called to inform me that I'm not welcome at Thanksgiving because Nathan believes I'd ruin the vibe. I didn't argue. I certainly didn't know he'd taken a position at Westbridge, and I had no idea he'd be in this meeting today. Bradley studied me for a long moment. Nathan comes highly recommended from his previous company. He's been with us for exactly 9 days. You, on the other hand, have a reputation in this industry that precedes you. I've heard nothing but exceptional things about your work. I appreciate that, Mr. Bradley. I can provide references if you'd like to verify anything about my professional conduct or ethics. That won't be necessary. He leaned back in his chair. Here's what I'm going to do. I want to hear your presentation. Nathan will not be in the room, to eliminate any appearance of impropriety. If your proposal is as strong as I suspect it will be, we'll move forward with the vetting process. At that point, I'll make a decision about how to handle the family connection. That's more than fair, I said. He stood and opened the door, speaking briefly with someone outside. When he returned, he was followed by Greg and 2 other Westbridge executives I'd been expecting. Nathan was nowhere to be seen. I delivered the presentation of my life. Every pain point addressed, every solution tailored specifically to their needs, every projection backed by solid data and realistic timelines. The slides moved seamlessly from market analysis to implementation strategy, each point building on the last. I could feel the energy in the room shift as they realized this wasn't just another generic pitch. Bradley leaned forward when I showed them the custom dashboard we developed specifically for their needs. This interfaces with our existing systems? Completely. We analyzed your current infrastructure and designed everything to integrate without disrupting your workflow. The transition period would be minimal, and we'd have dedicated support staff on site for the first 3 months. Greg, the executive who'd witnessed Nathan's outburst, asked about scalability. I'd anticipated this question and had prepared 3 different growth scenarios, each with detailed projections and resource requirements. As I walked them through the models, I noticed Bradley making notes, nodding occasionally. When I finished, the room was silent for a beat before Bradley started asking questions. Tough questions about security protocols, disaster recovery, team structure, and long-term maintenance costs. Exactly the kind I'd prepared for. Each answer came naturally, backed by research and real-world case studies from similar implementations. The other 2 executives, Sarah Chen and Marcus Webb, took turns probing different aspects of the proposal. Sarah focused on the financial models, stress testing my projections with various market scenarios. Marcus wanted details about team qualifications and project management methodologies. I had answers for everything. 90 minutes into what was supposed to be an hour meeting, Bradley glanced at his watch. I think we've covered everything I wanted to discuss. Sarah, Marcus, Greg, any final questions? They exchanged glances and shook their heads. An hour later, as the meeting wrapped up, Bradley shook my hand. Outstanding work, Ms. Monroe. You'll hear from us by end of week. I gathered my materials and walked back to my office on legs that felt slightly unsteady. The adrenaline that had carried me through the presentation was starting to fade, replaced by the dawning realization of just how complicated my life had become in the span of 24 hours. Jennifer looked up as I passed her desk, her expression expectant. How did it go? Complicated, I said. But I think well. She tilted her head, reading something in my expression. Want to talk about it? Not yet. Maybe later. I closed my office door and sank into my chair, letting my head fall back against the leather headrest. The morning sunlight streamed through my window, casting long shadows across the desk. Everything looked the same as it had 2 hours ago, but somehow the entire landscape of my life had shifted. My computer dinged with an incoming email. James Hartford, our CEO, wanted to see me in his office at 3. That was either very good or potentially problematic. I fired back a quick confirmation and tried to focus on other work, but concentration proved elusive. At 2:45, I made my way to the executive floor. James's assistant waved me through immediately. Close the door, James said as I entered. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair and the kind of measured demeanor that came from 3 decades in business development. I got an interesting call this morning from Thomas Bradley. My stomach clenched. Oh? He wanted to verify your employment history and performance record. Said there'd been some questions raised about your professional conduct. James studied me carefully. Want to tell me what's going on? I explained the situation as concisely as possible. James listened without interrupting, his expression neutral. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Your sister's husband, who you barely know, got you banned from Thanksgiving because he finds successful women threatening. Then he shows up at Westbridge, where you've been preparing a presentation for 6 weeks, and accuses you of engineering the whole thing to embarrass him. That's accurate. And Bradley called me to verify that you're not, in fact, some kind of corporate manipulator who orchestrates elaborate revenge schemes? Also accurate. James laughed, a sharp bark of sound. I told him you're one of the most ethical people I've ever worked with, and that if his VP of operations is making accusations like that, he should probably look more closely at the VP, not you. He paused. I also told him that if he selected us for the Westbridge project, it would be because we're the best fit, not because of any personal connections. Thank you for that. Don't thank me. You earned it. Just be prepared for fallout if we get the contract. Family dynamics can get messy when business is involved. They're already messy, I admitted. Then brace yourself. They're about to get messier. He was right, of course. My phone buzzed almost immediately after I returned to my office. Charlotte's name appeared on the screen. What did you do? She demanded as soon as I answered. Nathan just called me, absolutely furious. He says you ambushed him at his new job and tried to sabotage him in front of his boss. That's not what happened, Charlotte. Then what did happen? Because he's saying you orchestrated this whole thing to get revenge for not being invited to Thanksgiving. I took a deep breath. I had a scheduled presentation with Westbridge Technologies. I've been working on it for weeks. I had no idea Nathan worked there. He's the one who created a scene by accusing me of impropriety in front of his CEO. You're lying. You must have known. You're jealous that I'm happy and you're still single and alone. The word stung more than I wanted to admit. Charlotte, I have never been anything but supportive of your relationship. I've kept my mouth shut when Nathan made dismissive comments about my career. I didn't argue when Mom told me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving. But I will not apologize for doing my job professionally. Nathan says you need to back out of the Westbridge deal. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Absolutely not. I've put too much work into this, and Westbridge deserves the best solution for their needs, regardless of who your husband is. Then don't expect to be welcome at any family events going forward. Nathan is my husband, and I'm choosing him. That's your choice to make, I said quietly. But you should know that you're choosing a man who's so insecure about his own position that he can't handle his wife's sister being successful in her own right. She hung up on me. I stared at my phone for a moment before setting it face down on my desk. The office suddenly felt very quiet. That evening, I called Mom. I heard about what happened, she said before I could speak. Charlotte called me crying. Nathan called your father. This has become quite a mess. Mom, I didn't do anything wrong. I know, sweetheart. Your father and I talked about it, and we believe you. But Charlotte is very upset, and Nathan is making demands. What kind of demands? She sighed. He wants you to withdraw from the West Bridge project. He's saying it's either you back out or he won't come to any family events where you're present. So he's holding my family hostage until I sabotage my own career? Those aren't the words he used, but essentially, yes. I closed my eyes. What do you and Dad think I should do? We think you should do what's right for you, Mom said firmly. Your father is actually quite angry with Nathan. He called his behavior manipulative and controlling. But Charlotte won't hear a word against him. I'm not backing out, Mom. I've worked too hard for this. I didn't think you would. And I don't think you should. She paused. This might get worse before it gets better. She was right. Over the next 3 days, Charlotte sent me a series of increasingly hostile text messages. Nathan apparently spent his evenings complaining about me to anyone who would listen. My father called to offer his support, which helped more than I could express. Several of my cousins reached out, confused by the family drama that was apparently unfolding across multiple group chats. On Friday afternoon, Thomas Bradley called my direct line. Ms. Monroe, I've completed my review of the proposals we received. I'm pleased to inform you that Westbridge has selected Meridian Solutions as our partner. Relief and triumph flooded through me in equal measure. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. You won't regret this decision. I'm sure I won't. Your presentation was exceptional, and your references spoke very highly of your integrity and work ethic. He paused. I should tell you that Nathan submitted a formal complaint about the selection process. He claimed bias and nepotism. My stomach dropped. I see. I had HR conduct a thorough review. They found no evidence of any impropriety. In fact, they were rather concerned about Nathan's behavior. He's been counseled about the importance of maintaining professional boundaries and not allowing personal relationships to interfere with business decisions. I appreciate you taking this seriously. There's one more thing, Bradley said. Nathan has been placed on a performance improvement plan. His conduct this week raised several red flags about his judgment and professionalism. I wanted you to be aware, in case there are further family repercussions. After the call ended, I sat at my desk, processing everything. I'd won the account. My hard work had paid off. But I'd also apparently accelerated my brother-in-law's journey toward potentially losing his job. The rest of Friday passed in a blur of congratulatory messages from colleagues and follow-up emails about the Westbridge contract. Jennifer brought me coffee and a muffin from the cafe downstairs, insisting I needed to eat something. The concerned look on her face told me I probably looked as drained as I felt. You know what I don't understand? Jennifer said, perching on the edge of my desk. Why would someone actively try to sabotage their own family member's success? What does he gain from it? Control, I think. Some people can't handle not being the center of attention or the most accomplished person in the room. My success probably makes him feel inadequate, so instead of dealing with his own insecurities, he tries to tear me down. That's incredibly sad. It is, I agreed. But it's not my problem to fix. My phone rang again. Charlotte. Are you happy now? She screamed as soon as I answered. Nathan might lose his job because of you. His boss put him on some kind of probation. You've ruined his career. Charlotte, I did nothing to Nathan. He created this situation himself by behaving unprofessionally. That's not what he says. He says you went behind his back and poisoned his boss against him. He says you gave Bradley false information about his character. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building behind my eyes. I spoke to Thomas Bradley for exactly 5 minutes before the presentation started. I told him the truth about our family relationship and the Thanksgiving situation. Everything else that's happened to Nathan is a direct result of his own choices and behavior. You're lying. You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I found someone and you're still alone. The accusation stung because it touched on something I'd wondered about myself during lonely evenings in my empty apartment. But I pushed the feeling aside. Charlotte, listen to yourself. Does this sound like the person you want to be? Someone who attacks their sister to defend a man who's shown nothing but disrespect to your entire family? Don't you dare talk about my marriage. You don't know anything about it. I know he convinced you to exclude me from Thanksgiving. I know he's apparently so fragile that he can't handle me doing my job well. And I know that you're willing to destroy our relationship to make him feel better about himself. You're destroying my marriage. You're destroying my family. I hate you. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, Jennifer watching me with sympathetic eyes. That sounded rough, she said quietly. My sister just told me she hates me. She doesn't mean it. She's scared and lashing out. Maybe. But she said it. Jennifer squeezed my shoulder and left me alone with my thoughts. I tried to return to work, but the words kept echoing in my head. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. At 6, I gave up pretending to be productive and went home. My apartment felt particularly empty that evening. I'd moved in 3 years ago, after my last serious relationship ended. It was a beautiful space, full of carefully chosen furniture and art, but it had always felt more like a showcase than a home. Tonight, it felt like a museum of one person's solitary life. I called Mom, needing to hear a friendly voice. Did Charlotte call you? About 20 minutes ago. She's very upset. Nathan apparently didn't tell her about the performance improvement plan until his boss called him today with some additional concerns. What additional concerns? I don't have all the details, but apparently, Nathan has been speaking negatively about Westbridge's decision to several people, including clients. His boss found out and was not pleased. Nathan was digging his own grave, and somehow I was being blamed for it. The weekend crawled by. I tried to distract myself with work, with cleaning my already spotless apartment, with a long run through the park that left me physically exhausted but mentally still racing. Sunday evening, I found myself sitting on my couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through old photos on my phone. There was one from Charlotte's wedding. We were standing together in our matching bridesmaid dresses, her white gown radiant in the summer sunlight. We looked happy. She'd asked me to give a toast at the reception, and I talked about how proud I was of her, how much I loved seeing her so happy. Nathan had barely acknowledged me that night, too busy holding court with his own friends and family. I should have seen the signs then. The way he'd corrected Charlotte when she talked about going back to school. The subtle dismissive comments he made about her career as a graphic designer. The way he always had to be right, even about trivial things. But I'd written it off as wedding stress or just personality quirks. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Checking in on you. Your mother told me about the call with Charlotte. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. You did nothing wrong. Love you. I typed back a quick thank you, grateful for his support but wishing it could somehow fix the situation. Dad had always been the quiet strength in our family, the one who listened more than he spoke but always seemed to know the right thing to say when he finally did. Monday morning brought a team meeting about the Westbridge implementation. I'd assembled our best people for the project, developers, project managers, security specialists, and account managers who'd be working directly with the client. As I briefed them on the scope and timeline, I could see the excitement building. This was the kind of high-profile project that could make careers. One thing you should know, I said as we wrapped up. Westbridge has a VP of operations who has a personal connection to me. We're not on good terms. If he attempts to interfere with this project or create problems, I need to know immediately. Document everything. Keep all communications professional and by the book. We cannot give him any ammunition to use against us. My lead developer, Kevin Martinez, raised his hand. What kind of interference are we talking about? Hopefully none. But be prepared for possible attempts to discredit our work, unreasonable demands, or obstacles that seem designed to make us fail rather than to improve the project. The team exchanged glances but nodded their understanding. Tuesday brought another complication. My Aunt Patricia called to say she'd spoken with Charlotte and was deeply concerned about what she'd heard. Your sister isn't making sense, Patricia said bluntly. She's defending this man like he's some kind of saint when everything she's describing sounds manipulative and controlling. I tried to point out some red flags, and she shut down completely. She's not ready to hear it, I said. Maybe not. But I'm worried about her. This Nathan character sounds dangerous, and I don't mean that lightly. I'm worried too. But she's made it clear she doesn't want my input. Patricia sighed. Sometimes people have to make their own mistakes. Doesn't make it easier to watch, though. Wednesday afternoon, I received an email from Greg at Westbridge, copying Thomas Bradley. Nathan had apparently sent a memo to several department heads questioning the validity of our security protocols and suggesting they reconsider the partnership. Greg wanted to schedule a call to address these concerns. I read the email twice, anger building with each pass. Nathan was actively trying to sabotage the project, exactly as I'd warned my team might happen. I forwarded the email to James with a brief explanation. His response came within minutes: document everything. Respond professionally. Let them see the contrast between your conduct and his. The call with Greg and Bradley happened Thursday morning. I brought Kevin to walk them through the technical details of our security infrastructure. I want to be clear, Bradley said at the start of the call. These concerns Nathan raised are not reflective of Westbridge's position. However, given his role in the company, I felt it was appropriate to address them directly rather than let them fester. I appreciate that, I said. Kevin, why don't you walk them through our security protocols? Kevin spent the next 30 minutes detailing our multi-layered approach to data protection, including encryption standards, access controls, audit trails, and disaster recovery procedures. He referenced industry certifications, compliance standards, and case studies from similar implementations. By the time he finished, even I was impressed, and I'd already reviewed all of this material. That's comprehensive, Greg said. I don't see any gaps or concerns. Bradley agreed. Nathan's memo suggested vulnerabilities that clearly don't exist. I'm not sure if he misunderstood the proposal or was deliberately misrepresenting it. Given the context of our relationship, I'll let you draw your own conclusions, I said carefully. But I stand behind our security infrastructure completely. After the call ended, Kevin looked at me. That guy really has it out for you. Unfortunately, yes. Well, at least we made him look incompetent in front of his boss. That wasn't the goal, I said. But I'm not going to let him destroy months of work just to soothe his ego. Friday brought another family dinner at my parents' house. I almost didn't go, worried about running into Charlotte, but Mom assured me she and Nathan had other plans. Dad greeted me at the door with a hug. How are you holding up? I've had better weeks. I bet. He led me into the kitchen, where Mom was pulling a casserole from the oven. Your mother's been worried about you. I'm fine, really. Just tired of all the drama. Mom set down the casserole and turned to face me. Have you heard from Charlotte at all? Not since she called to yell at me on Friday. You? She calls every day, usually to complain about you or about Nathan's work situation. I've tried to be supportive, but it's difficult when I fundamentally disagree with how she's handling things. We sat down to dinner, and for a brief moment, everything felt normal. We talked about Dad's retirement plans, Mom's book club, the neighbor's new puppy. It was only when dessert came out that Charlotte's name came up again. Patricia called me, Mom said. She's planning that dinner next weekend. She specifically wants you there. I'll be there, I said. It'll be nice to be around family who don't think I'm some kind of villain. Dad reached over and squeezed my hand. You're not a villain. You're a successful woman doing her job. If Nathan can't handle that, it says everything about him and nothing about you. Thanksgiving arrived. I spent the morning volunteering at a local food bank, serving meals to families who had nowhere else to go. There was something grounding about the experience, a reminder that my family drama was ultimately a first-world problem. These people were worried about having enough food to eat, about keeping roofs over their heads. My problem suddenly felt very small by comparison, then had dinner with Jennifer and her family. They were warm and welcoming, and I was grateful for the distraction. But I couldn't help thinking about my own family gathering, happening without me. Mom called that evening. How was your day? Good, actually. Different, but good. How was Thanksgiving? She sighed heavily. Tense. Nathan spent most of the meal complaining about his job situation. Charlotte barely ate. Your father and I tried to keep things pleasant, but it was difficult. Several people asked where you were. What did you tell them? The truth. That you weren't invited. How did that go over? About as well as you'd expect. Your Aunt Patricia asked Charlotte directly why you weren't there, and Charlotte said something about you being too busy with work. Patricia said that was nonsense and that she'd be calling you herself. True to form, Aunt Patricia called me the next day and invited me to a belated Thanksgiving dinner at her house the following weekend. Family is family, she said. And excluding people because some insecure man feels threatened is not how we do things. December brought a flurry of activity. The Westbridge project kicked off, and I found myself working closely with their executive team. Nathan was conspicuously absent from most meetings, usually represented by Greg or another colleague. When he did attend, he avoided making eye contact with me and contributed minimally. I heard through Mom that Charlotte had started seeing a therapist. Nathan had apparently become increasingly controlling and angry, not just about the work situation but about other aspects of their life. She'd confided to Mom that she was starting to see sides of him that frightened her. In mid-December, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Charlotte sat in my waiting area, her eyes red from crying. Can we talk? She asked quietly. I led her into my office and closed the door. We sat in silence for a moment. I'm leaving, Nathan, she finally said. I wanted you to hear it from me. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. You were right about him. He's been getting worse ever since the Westbridge thing. He's controlling. He monitors my phone. He criticizes everything I do. Last week, he grabbed my arm during an argument and left bruises. She pushed up her sleeve, showing me the fading marks. That's when I knew I had to get out. Charlotte, I'm so sorry. You don't need to apologize. I should be apologizing to you. I let him turn me against you. I said terrible things. I chose him over my own sister when you'd done nothing wrong. I moved to sit beside her, pulling her into a hug as she started to cry. You don't have to apologize. I'm just glad you're safe. I'm staying with Mom and Dad for now. I've already filed for divorce. My lawyer says it should be relatively straightforward since we haven't been married long and don't have kids. Whatever you need, I'm here, I said. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. There's something else you should know. Nathan got fired from Westbridge yesterday. They found out he'd been trying to sabotage your project. He was feeding information to one of their competitors. I sat back, stunned. What? He told me about it last night in one of his rants. He was so obsessed with making you fail that he committed corporate espionage. When Westbridge found out, they fired him immediately and are considering legal action. The weight of everything Nathan had done, all the damage he'd caused to himself, settled over me. He'd lost his job, his marriage, and potentially his entire career, all because he couldn't handle the idea that his wife's sister was successful. I'm moving back home with Mom and Dad, Charlotte continued. At least until I figure things out. I was hoping maybe we could start over? As sisters? I'd like that, I said honestly. The holidays that year were different than any I'd experienced before. Christmas Eve found me at my parents' house with Charlotte, Mom, Dad, and a handful of relatives who'd made it clear they supported both of us. Nathan was nowhere in sight, reportedly back in his hometown licking his wounds. Charlotte and I sat on the back porch after dinner, wrapped in blankets against the December chill. I keep thinking about how close I came to losing you permanently, she said. All because I believed him when he said you were the problem. People can be very convincing when they want to be, I replied. Especially when they're playing on insecurities. He knew exactly what buttons to push. The fact that you're younger and more successful. That you seem to have everything figured out while I was still finding my way. He made it seem like your success was somehow a criticism of my choices. Your choices are yours to make, Charlotte. I've never judged you for them. I know that now. I should have known it then. We sat in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Thomas Bradley, reaching out to let me know that the Westbridge project had exceeded all expectations and they were looking to expand our partnership. He also mentioned that the attempted sabotage had actually strengthened their security protocols and ultimately made their business stronger. It sometimes came from difficult situations. Nathan's attempt to destroy my career had backfired spectacularly, costing him everything while ultimately making me stronger professionally. Charlotte's willingness to see the truth had saved her from a potentially dangerous marriage. And my family, fractured by manipulation and insecurity, was slowly healing. "What are you thinking about?" Charlotte asked. "Just that sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best outcomes. If Nathan hadn't banned me from Thanksgiving, I might not have been quite so motivated during that Westbridge presentation. If he hadn't made such a scene, Bradley might not have paid such close attention to his behavior. And if all of this hadn't happened, you might have stayed in a marriage that was making you unhappy." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "When did you get so wise?" "Probably around the time my sister's husband told me I'd ruin the vibe at Thanksgiving," I said with a slight smile. She laughed, a real laugh, the first I'd heard from her in months. "I'm never going to live that down, am I? Probably not. But that's what family is for." Inside the house, Mom called us for dessert. We gathered our blankets and headed in, ready to face whatever came next, together.